Okay, guys, let's start. If Vladan joins, fantastic. But we can't wait for him. It's not like we can just search for him around. Brilliant. So welcome to this year's panel on Drupal distributions. I am the host. My name is Maciej Lukianski. I'm one of the organizers of the DrupalCamp. With me, I have, starting from my left and like country clockwise, we have Bram from Open Social. We have Grzegorz, who is the tech lead of Drupal, and we have Raul, who works on from Public Plan, who works on the Gov. Right, so my proposal is this. I have prepared if I will post it into the chat window of the session, a link with questions. It's an Appsly.do app where you can, if you click on it and you click login, you don't have to give it an email or anything. People can add their own questions and vote on questions, and this way kind of lead us in this discussion about Drupal distributions. I have prepared some opening questions, which I shared with you a little bit as well beforehand as the opening, but if our participants have any other questions, everybody, even without giving their name, are able to type in the question and submit it here, and then they can steer this discussion this way. For now, it would be great if you guys, I know you all had your sessions today. I'm not sure if everybody attended every single one, so it would be great if you just in a few words introduced yourselves, and then we can move on to the first session.
Cool. Shall I start because I'm on the left?
You are. Let's do the same in the same order, so there's no confusion.
Cool. Yeah. Right. Hey, super thanks for having me here. I'm Bram ten Hove. I'm CTO at Open Social. I've seen not all sessions today, but I've seen quite a few, and really cool to see how you guys organize this. And I've seen some really cool sessions also just now from Raul and from Grzegorz. It was really nice attending those. Thanks. So Open Social is one of the Drupal distributions, and we're building a community software based on Drupal. And we're used by organizations like the United Nations, Greenpeace, 4House, which is a Swiss think tank, municipalities in the Netherlands, and all kinds of local clubs and organizations that seem to be using Open Social, but I don't personally know. So thanks for having me.
Great. Grzegorz, you're next.
Okay, so a moment ago I had a presentation about Drupal. I'm the tech lead there. And Drupal is a distribution that is focused for corporate websites, but also for people who want to have an easy Drupal solution out of the box and who don't want to lose time on configuring sites, on creating content types, paragraphs. We offer things that are available just after installations, and we try to meet the expectations of company websites. So I think that's the most important thing about Drupal.
Well, I take part in the presentation our long journey in this installation profile land regarding Drupal distribution Gov, which is intended for e-government or for government institutions along Germany, and we hope out of Germany too in the future, but nowadays only into Germany. And we are aimed to prepare distribution which is easy to distribute or to deploy in for all projects which are mostly based in the same structure, more or less the same design, and really flexible way to reuse components that are present in the distributions to be used fully configured, ready to use as soon as a project is installed.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, so many people have joined this session. I see people joining here. Before I said it, there's a link in the chat. You can go in and ask us questions, and we vote on the questions, and we will be discussing the questions that are there. And we already have some user-generated questions, which I think, since they are also voted on more than my questions, which I invited, we should probably start from those. And the first one goes straight to the point, which is, how much is it profitable from your point of view to maintain a distribution? So who wants to go first on this one? Bram, you had an interesting presentation. Your distribution is completely out of the box, maybe a bit different than a typical Drupal distribution.
Yeah, so I think this is actually a very interesting question, because we had quite some internal discussions about this, and also external recently with the folks at the Platform SH, for example. We had a discussion about that. And it's actually a very hard question to answer. How profitable is maintaining a distribution? Like, it depends a bit on what kind of distribution it is, right? Like, we have in the Drupal ecosystem, you basically have two different types of distributions. You have like the quick starters. I think everybody knows that, and I think a lot of agencies also have their own installation profiles. When we used to be an agency, we also had like a quick start profile to get going quickly, and not to be able to have to do all the basic stuff. And you have your full featured distributions, and these can be quite large, right? If I speak for Open Social, we have, I think, I don't know, we have thousands of hours spent on Open Social, which actually, well, it's like hundreds of thousands of euros, probably more towards 1-2 million euros that we spent on in this product. For us, it's indeed a bit of a different use case, because we're selling this commercially, right? That was always the intent from the start. Like, we're maintaining a distribution. We also want it to be open source. We want it to be a free to use distribution, but we also wanted to build a business out of this. Is it profitable? For us, yes, although we've been bootstrapping ever since. Like, if I look back at 2019, I think we've been doing half of our revenue probably was coming from Open Social through non-recurring revenue, like one-off projects, enterprise projects that we did, recurring revenue for our SaaS model. And half of that was from other projects that we did, one-off agency projects, basically, which I think we spent probably 1 million in investing Open Social, maybe in 2019 alone. Like, we spent a lot of money on that. So yeah, is it profitable? Yes. Although we really want to ask yourself, what do you want to achieve with this? I think we have a very commercial part. I think I just listened into Gregor's presentation, where I think in the chat in the end you were also saying that you're profitable. If though, like, I looked at the commits that you were doing, like, you had over 2,000 commits, right? So there's a lot of work that is being put into the distribution. That if you check if that could be matched to billable hours, this is like a lot of money, and you need to be able to have this paid by clients, in my opinion, or to be profitable at least. But yeah, coming back to the question, is it, do you want your distribution to be profitable? I think a lot of the distributions that we have in Drupal 8, I think they're like almost 150, 200. They don't necessarily want to be profitable either. So yeah, I can't really speak for Drupaler if that's the case. So I'm really curious also to hear the thoughts of the different panelists regarding that. But yeah, for Open Social, yeah, it is profitable. Although, yeah, you have to consider the huge amount of investment going into that.
Sure. Raul, can you share your thoughts?
Yes, for us, has been profitable at this moment because until now, because all of our projects are more or less based on the same structure, the same colors, and the different agencies, and in this case, the different ministries are using the same structure in their websites. So we are really fast in the development of a new project or a new site for a new ministry, for example, because the full structure is being reused once and again. And we are doing small changes to adapt, for example, the view of a calendar, because they don't want to have the full name for the month or something else. And the best of our distribution in this case is that we are adding we are adding constantly new components that we develop in the projects in order to maintain this usability between projects as high as possible. So if we are developing a module in a project which is intended to show a list of Twitter tweets, for example, we reuse this component and we adapt it to use it in another project. And this component, this module, will become part of the new release of the distribution. So in this case, for us, it's really profitable to have this kind of distribution. The most difficult part in this case is to maintain the dependencies between the modules and to maintain the code as cleaner as possible in order to avoid possible incompatibilities or backwards incompatibilities if a new update of the core, for example, or a new library is released and it's not more supported because anyway, anything it's happened, and that is for us the most complicated part of the maintainership, the distribution. But for now, it has been really profitable. Now with the new requirements like decoupling, performance, and so on. It's starting to become a little bit more complicated, but we need to readapt the concepts and readapt the way of thinking distribution, maybe.
Go, Grzegorz. Handing over to you.
It's morally a question for you, but
maybe so.
But from my perspective, it's very cool that we already develop websites, big websites based on Drupal. And also, Drupal is like an idea that everybody has the same theme, and this theme differs by some factors. Like, I don't know, the more you change it, the more is the difference. So it's, if you want a cheap website, you can have the same design as Drupal. If you want more expensive, you can change it less you like. And it's very cool that we don't have to actually squeeze customers' websites into Drupal. We can just ask them if they like how Drupal works. So we gathered a set of paragraphs, a set of common elements of company websites, and it actually works. So we can prepare a really fast layout for someone, ask if it's okay. It already started to work for us. Like, I don't know if I can explain it to you, but it's very nice that our idea is like verified by life, and it really brings us value.
Yes, true. And if I were to add, because with Grzegorz we work in the same company, if I were to add what Drupal gives us is that it's difficult to calculate profitability, to be fair. In that sense, we're more closer probably to the gov rather than to open social, where we can actually count the amount of installations and multiply it somehow by SaaS revenues or anything. But we do build websites on it. It is true, and it helps us to build websites quickly. That's one thing. It saves us time when we're supposed to build websites. That's one benefit. Another benefit is the credibility that it gives us. We can show potential clients that we are experts in Drupal, like we maintain a distribution that is being used by other websites and other developers, and this shows that we are a really experienced Drupal shop, and they can go in and look at the code and see how well it's written. So this is a credibility. This adds credibility to us. It also serves as a good demo for Drupal if people want to see how Drupal works or what you could do. We use Drupal to present it, and this helps a lot as well. So these are the benefits, and it helps us win clients as well, where we can just present stuff or even kind of say, well, we've kind of already have half of what you want done. You can see it here, and we can deliver the other half. This brings a lot of and this reduces the client anxiety, and it helps us sell as well. So these are the benefits. To be fair, I was hoping we would much sooner be implementing Drupal, because people just want Drupal. That takes more time than we anticipated, but it's starting to happen. People do start contacting us for implementations of Drupal specifically, which is a good indication, but it's not like it's taking more time. Then we may have to do some more marketing around it, to be honest. So that might be a reason. There might be an issue, but yeah, I was hoping this would take it would be a shorter period of time, but still, I think Drupal helps us a lot. And there's also another benefit is when there are people in the company that don't really have a project at the moment, Drupal is a fantastic opportunity to give back to open source community and help the company at the same time. So we always have a place where if you have a break or whatever on any project, there's a great place for you to work with, and there's always a feature list and a bug list that you can work on. And this is also really cool because there's no time pressure on these tickets. You can actually really try to do the best that you can, not being constrained by budgets and timelines, and actually do real Drupal work, which is also really cool. Right, so this is our answer. Another question: if you were to start over with your distribution, what would you do differently? I'll give it to Grzegorz first, maybe.
It's tricky. Yeah, I would say we would be more cautious. Like we did a lot of things too fast, and maybe we would think some things over, like putting some models or not being modular. I think it's the biggest problem here, that we did some decisions and we cannot go back. So I suppose I don't know. It's easy to say now because we talked a lot about this, but we would be more cautious while choosing new solutions. That's the definite answer.
Cool. And Raul, maybe how would you?
Yes, I'm more the same opinion. At the beginning, we have started to develop all kind of modules to do something, to do some other thing. We didn't take in care the dependencies between modules, and we had a lot of small modules that were doing things that Drupal itself could do. And I think it was a big performance problem in the distribution, and on the load of most pages in the distribution of the box. Fortunately, we have changed this approach, and we removed a lot of small modules that were doing things that are present directly on Drupal or joining modules that before were separately installed and did the same work. It doesn't make any sense at this time those modules to have those modules. And I think if I would start another distribution, I would opt for a modular approach without dependencies, or with the less dependency between modules as possible. So I think kind of components, component that will work isolated or for itself can be delivered in different ways, and they can offer a full working component to be deployed in a website or to be embedded in a particular design without much effort. So a kind of modular, not dependent, distribution.
Cool. Bram,
Yeah.
over to you.
Yeah. So we started with Open Social when Drupal 8 was just out. Well, it was actually not really out. It was like, I think in Alpha 1 Alpha 2 that we started. I think that was maybe, looking back, well, maybe not our biggest mistake, but one of our mistakes where after, well, alpha versions, and with Drupal that alpha versions are, they have backwards compatibility breaking changes. So we actually had, in the first couple of months, we had to redo a lot of things that we started with in the beginning. So yeah, one of the things would definitely be not start with anything in alpha. I would have loved if we could start with 1.0, but we learned a lot about the Drupal core as well, because we really had to dive into the APIs and the inner workings of Drupal core instead of just reusing what you find on the internet, right? Another thing that also came from starting early, I think, is that we went with features instead of config management. And that was one of the reasons there was also that config management was, it was working pretty okay for just normal sites. But for distributions, not so much. Super complicated also for the distributions in general to maintain configuration and what do you update for users of your distribution and what do you keep fixed in your opinionated way, right? Features helped us, I guess, in the beginning because we didn't really have a different choice. But it became a really big burden later on. And I think we spent probably 2 months of in total span of getting rid of features as well. So it took quite a bit of effort to go to config management. And now that we're there, we're pretty happy with also the update helper modules. And you see in the last 3 years that there's a lot of things happening for distributions in Drupal core and the surrounding ecosystem that makes it much easier to maintain these things. And I definitely agree with Gregos and Raoul. We need to have probably built specific things more flexible, more generic. It's always easy to look back and say, okay, this is something we should have done differently. And I can definitely still point out things that I would really like to have seen have changed. But looking back, I can definitely see that the choices we made were based on the info that we had then, based on the practices we knew then. And looking back now, the web is always evolving, Drupal is always evolving. Looking back, it's always easy indeed to say this should have changed. But with the knowledge that we have now, I think we've done a couple of things really good, and also a couple of things that we should have changed, like making it much more specific. If we're looking at group types, we use the group module in Open Social. We have the open group type, we have the closed group type, we have the public group type. But maintaining different group types is not easy. It's not easy, and it sounds really stupid because it's only a group type, but the core of Open Social is really surrounded around that. And now that we have one group type, we are migrating everything to that. It's going to make the maintenance of that much easier. And that would have been definitely one of the choices that in the core of Open Social that I would have loved that we have done differently. And I'm not sure, like with, for example, Gregor, I think you were also saying that with the team, that you provide a team out of the box. and that you can provide, enterprise clients, for example, can change this theme or make it more their own. I think one of the things we made a mistake in, like it's more like in a SaaS business, I think, is actually the implementation, that we deviated too much into like these custom themes for clients and not stay too much close to the Drupal distro theme, which also made it very hard to update. So I would have definitely made our team more flexible and more configurable in that regards, so that the end user actually has a much easier upgrade path and much easier flexibility in the current theme that everybody uses.
You were guys very brave, because when you were starting in Drupal 8 Alpha, I remember us building first Drupal websites. You kind of had all these best practices from Drupal 7 that you knew were working, and you were kind of like, for example, features. We used features initially as well in Drupal 8 websites because this was the way.
Yeah.
And before you learn all the lessons.
Yeah, and it's the same also with testing, by the way. I was talking to someone internally as well, like about testing recently, and we were actually accustomed to using BIA testing. So it's really like the behavioral acceptance testing, using Selenium, etc. But like thinking about it now, like I really would have liked we used PHP units from the start, because it's much easier to integrate, for example, in the issue queue in Drupal. Like we have no option there, basically. So yeah, there are definitely some things that we could have done differently. And I agree, we were a bit brave, and I think we were also a bit stupid. But we're here still, so I think we did some things good.
Awesome. And tell me, Raul, how about you? If you were to start again?
Maybe so. At the beginning, we used features too, and it was a really early version of Drupal 8, and it was really painful to integrate all the functionalities and use this kind of functions. And we started using Behat test too, because it was the easy way to test the functionalities in the front end and the new developed modules and so on. And nowadays we are using more PHP unit for our internal development, and it's completely integrated in our pipeline and in our workflow and so on. But we are using PHP unit only for the right critical functionalities and not for all, because unit testing it's really powerful, but only when it's right used. And for the other things, we are using Behat testing too. That is something that we have changed during the past, during this time of development, and we are proud of it, because at the beginning we were at the same point. For all, we have used Behat test, and at some point we realized that something is not going really good, and therefore we added PHP unit test, functional tests, and recently regression tests using Backstop.js and so on. So I wouldn't change so much if I would start again with a new distribution. So maybe the use of Backstop.js for the regression test is not being used at this moment, but we are improving the use of this kind of testing each day. Also, as I said, I wouldn't change. Not more from the current point I am speaking about.
Oh, cool. Brilliant. So the next question I have is, why aren't distributions more popular? And this is a question from me that I prepared here, because I'm curious. They do serve their purposes quite well, quite often, and there are some really nice distributions that go a long way, yet most developers are really when you talk to them, they're like, yeah, distributions, yeah, well, let's just start from scratch. And this is the typical scenario. Why do you think that happens? Who wants to go first on that
So
one?
I can start. So I think the popularity of distribution is not so huge because I think they are less flexible. So in fact, if I am using a distribution and I have a lot of things to customize, or I have specific requirements that need to be implemented, a distribution is is not maybe the best way to go, because anyway I receive ready to use components or modules or functionalities. Okay, that is pretty fine, but if my customer don't want to have this functionality but slightly different functionality, then I have to undevelop what is done and redevelop again the functionality in the way my customer is asking me for. So it's most difficult to do this kind of development as starting from the beginning to construct a functionality or a specific requirement. Anyway, a distribution can as helpful as the requirements were taken. When the requirements are wrong taken, then maybe the distribution more complicated as and fresh start from the beginning.
So that's actually an interesting point you're also making, Roel, about like redoing certain functionality. I think what I'm seeing in OpenSocial, for example, as well, and that's what we're seeing even for like enterprise clients, is that we're also sometimes redoing the work in the core of OpenSocial. We've learned a hard lesson there, is that actually we should not really change the core. We either need to make it more flexible, or we just should say no to the client. Like, it's explaining also to the client, like, hey, we're going to give you this product, or we're just going to start with this distribution, and then like it comes with this functionality out of the box. Like, if this is not what you want, like, okay, sure, we can spend a lot of time redoing it. It will make our maintenance will make it harder. Is that what you want, right? So it's also really a question to the client for hey, do you want to spend time on that, or do you want to do the additional maintenance? So also also that if we redo it, then it's actually not that smart. We should probably usually try to implement that in the project itself, right? Like, we contribute to the distribution by making it more flexible or changing the functionality to adapt to client needs. Problem is with clients, what I noticed also in the past with OpenSocial, is that each client wants to be unique. So if you have a certain calendar functionality, for example, it's always going to be different for each client, and it's also a task of us distribution owners, maintainers, or the person that are going to be starting to use a distribution, to explain to the client, hey, this is just what you're dealing with. Like, is it that important that you want to change that? Is this like critical, or do you want to like mess up the maintenance later on in the update path? So I think that's also a really hard one to do. I think saying no is incredibly tough, but it's also usually very necessary. And coming back also to Roel's point, like there's always a certain way of how a distribution is done, and I think that's developers. We have our opinions. The distribution maintainer has our opinions, and these usually don't match. Right? There's always something, hey, we should do this better, or we should do this differently, not use that part, and then it's a waste of time. So I think that's also for business owners to decide, like, hey, you have your opinions, developers, but go and use this distribution and contribute to the project. And in the end, this is going to be much more cost effective for everybody in the Drupal ecosystem as well.
Yes, this is a good point. I think the main point is flexibility. When we talk about, or when you try to explain to someone what a distribution is, and then you start to explain, yes, it's a couple of modules with probably a theme, so that you can install it, and you have out of the box a really functional site. Okay. And what about if I want to replace one of the components of this distribution? Oh, sorry, that is not possible. It's not thought for this purpose. So I think the point for a distribution in the future is the flexibility, and instead of thinking in a distribution like a modeling kit toy, it's like a Lego toy. So we can starting to build a car kit, for example, and we have only the pieces for this car, and at the end we have a functional car and so on, and we can modeling a plane or a car or something else. But if we think about Lego model, we can have some pieces and we can buy something, but when I want to change one piece, I can just go to the shop and buy some pieces, some new pieces, and replace my pieces for these new ones. I think this is the more flexible idea behind the distribution or something else.
That's interesting. I had this discussion quite a few times recently with people as well, and one of the things that I, for example, think is that because I used quite a few distributions on Drupal 7 as well, and if you look at their history, most of them didn't upgrade to Drupal 8 at all. Like, so if you build something on Open Atrium or whichever distribution there, and you relied on it, you're stuck, and you have to build your own solution on Drupal 8 now. And a migration from a distribution is not easy, and that might be also the challenge where people are, because many, like a distribution that was very popular in Drupal 7 and which is still being searched for Drupal 8 by people. If you look at the statistics of what Drupal search for, of what people search for in Drupal in Google, is the Commerce Kickstart. That was really a massively popular. I checked just now that at the height of its popularity, it had 14,000 installations. As you know, as the Drupal.org reports it, in 2015 that was 14,000. Now it's down to 5,000, which is still a massive number, to be fair. Yeah, and this also didn't go, like, there is a demo, but the guys decided not to do a Drupal distribution again. So many people did distributions for Drupal 7, and then they said, well, for Drupal 8, we're not going to do it. We've learned our lesson. We're not going to do it again. And then we came and we said, well, we didn't do a distribution in 7. Let's do it in 8. So I think that many developers are reluctant also still, because they remember that it wasn't easy. And some people also say that it may be easy to start your project, but it's then difficult to maintain. The upgrades of distributions are not always as easy. And especially if you override it a little bit, you're kind of left with this. Some of the code is yours, some is not, some is contrib, some is, some is somewhere in between there, some is the distribution code, which is maybe now it's getting better, but it's not always very flexible. Like modules in Drupal are fantastic compared to other distributions that really you can, self-contained quite often, and you just plug it in and it works with everything else and it's self-contained. Whereas the distribution kind of goes all over the place, as a glue between all the modules, and then it's more difficult to maintain that, like a theme, for example, right? You change it and then it changes, and so I suppose that these risks people see, and that these are the things that people worry about as well, from my experience. And doing these modular distributions, which you Raul are talking about, I think might persuade people, if these are better written, if these work better, if these are more flexible, more self-contained, easier to override, they give more, say, places to change the behavior without having to hack into the distribution itself, and retain the upgradability of the distribution. Composer, for example, helps quite nicely, where you just have the distribution inside it as in Composer, you don't really change it yourself. So maybe this is the way for distributions to become more popular, because I crunched the numbers and it's 4% of websites or so, or between 3 or 4% of websites are built on distributions. If you kind of look at the Drupal.org, how many Drupals are installed, and then you add all the distributions and total them up, it's kind of 4%, which is not that bad, but it's not fantastic either.
Yeah, I would say that there's one more factor, that you have to learn a lot of things to use new distribution. And it's even like for our company, it's hard to find people who are specialists in Lightning, in Thunder, in OpenSocial. So we have our own distribution and we know it. But if you have to start tomorrow a new project on Thunder, then you have to like go through a lot. So maybe it's something it's easier to sometimes it's easier to do something from scratch than to research those tons of models and stuff. So maybe that's also it.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. But making a flexible distribution, it's incredibly hard. Like if we've had a lot of discussions internally. I remember two years ago that we had a discussion. Okay, what are we for distribution? Are we indeed like this full-featured distribution, or are we something that people can plug and play certain parts of it, components? I think with some of the stuff that we did, we split up pretty okay, but others are quite tightly coupled, and there's also no way around that. Distributions are indeed like the glue between a lot of like these modules, and they have like kind of like opinionated way of doing that. At this point, what we saw when we moved away from features is that modules like, for example, Update Helper. And I'm not entirely sure. It's also provided or built by a distribution that on Drupal.org, maybe Thunder or Lightning, and that really helps also to give more control to the end user on what is going to be installed, what is going to be updated, and also with config management, you can more easily override certain parts of a distribution without breaking it when you upgrade. But there's always a very big risk of breaking your site if you upgrade, and that's one of the lessons we learned, where we said, okay, we're going to stick as close as possible to the distribution, and that's it. Like, we need to work together to make it better and make it more flexible with configuration as well. And when we add new features, we try to add them as optional modules, which you can enable yourself, and try to keep it manageable in this way. But I think it's super hard to make a flexible distribution. If you also want to solve like a certain use case, right? Like with OpenSocial, it's pretty straightforward use case. You have community software. If you look at others, it's more like a building bricks for websites in general. So I think there's also a different way of working there.
Brilliant. Thank you for your comments. My next question here, which is submitted by a person here, is should there be more efforts to promote distributions? And maybe I'll kind of bundle this up with one of my questions is, how do you see the distributions in the Drupal ecosystem overall in the future? Do you think this will grow in Drupal 8, or do you think this will remain a tiny ecosystem within Drupal? Do you think more and more, like on Drupal 8, you have huge distributions. Thunder is a massive distribution. OpenSocial, you guys are paving the way for something completely different, a startup built on Drupal overall, a public plan as well. You guys with their Gov, that's something really cool, which brings a lot to the government. Like overall, it kind of pushes Drupal as a better offer for the government compared to some other packages. But do you think more and more will evolve? More will people use them, or will people kind of more use? Like, what do you think?
I think it's really a complicated question. So this is as much used as the usability it delivers. So I don't think that the distributions will evolve as a self-contained package as for the moment. So I think the distributions will be more flexible as we talked about it, and I don't think that's I think in a distribution like a marketplace in which I can select the components I need, and I can download this as a distribution and can use them directly in my place. And I want to use another component, I go to this market again and I select a new component or a new package that I want to integrate to my site, and automatically it will be integrated. To archive this goal, we need to deliver more interoperability. What is not the same as complement or dependencies between modules. So we need to go in the direction as the intercommunication between components, and not making them more dependent, but more how can I say it, with more communications between components, so that the components can work as a self-contained components, but work with another components, interchanging information or making aggregated work and so on. So I think that the distributions in Drupal should evolve to this model of collaboration agents instead of coupled packages.
Yeah, so this is an interesting point, because from our perspective, looking just at Open Social, we should actually move more towards like this coupled part, where we should actually not do, like we should actually move towards solving one use case and not so much do this dependency or isolation of components. To some regard, obviously, you need to do this because this is, for an architectural point of view, this is very interesting. It's also why we want to go API first with Open Social. So there's a lot of things going on there, which will already move into the path that Raoul said. From a use case perspective of what the distribution does, is for us really solving one issue or one like bigger team of issues, which is like the community software. I felt a bit, but yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Raoul. I felt a bit more that what you were saying is actually that we should move more towards this, the specific use case that you want to achieve with the distribution, that you should make that more flexible. Mm-hmm. And that might really work with a lot of like the distributions. But if I'm just looking specifically at Open Social, it's not gonna work, because we're really also trying to make this a single product as well, right? Like we're commercializing this as well, so it's a kind of different perspective on that. Mm-hmm. I do see that with what you're saying, Raoul, with in the future in the ecosystem, that this is probably something that we're going towards. Like on one hand, you have the distributions which are more towards a specific use case, which is also like, for example, I think it's Opinio with the learning management system, Open Church, which is really specifically focused on like church websites with like different components on that. And what you see there, and that's also what we have, is that, hey, you use a lot of like the Drupal modules, And on top of that, you do your glue to make it all work in one package. And with going API first and with going headless in the Drupal ecosystem, you're probably going to see more and more probably of a split between these two, where you see like specific use cases that are being bundled versus more what the rule is saying, indeed, going into these different components that you can easily reuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a very hard question for us because we know the distributions and we are starting from entirely different point than people who just use Drupal. So I don't know. From my example, 99% of sites I did in my private life, like since last 2 years, were on Drupal, because I know that I know what I get. I know that I have the Bootstrap like out of the box. I don't have to use the Drupal's theme, but I have everything that Bootstrap offers. So like a site that works right away, and but I don't believe that people will start like using distributions more than the clear Drupal, whatever we say about it. But it's really hard to answer this question for me.
And if we're talking about like promoting like these different things, is it also about promoting like looking at what we're offering as a distribution? And it's a little bit easier for me to talk about like how we are and versus like the whole ecosystem. So I'm really talking about like our own perspective here as well, is that like we're offering like a more or less a solution for your use case, right? There's a problem you have, we have a solution, and it's open social. You can install it for free via Drupal.org. There's not really much promotion going on there, apart from people that know Drupal. They know, hey, there are distributions, and open source is one of them. And if I'm looking for open or like a community software, I probably need to look at that. And the same, I think, goes for Drupal or for DCOF. Like you have a certain use case, I can go there. Drupal itself is promoting just for, hey, you have a cool website builder, you have a cool content management system, cool content management framework, more or less, with a lot of features, but it's not promoting the installer profiles, the distribution inside its community. So I think there is a lot of possibility there for the greater Drupal community to bring others, any organization or person with a problem to the community and stick around for Drupal, as well as stick around for Drupal or for DCOF, as that is the first thing that they're solving the use case with. And there's obviously been a lot of work in both your projects as well, that will help people out of the box with a lot of like these solutions. And if they're, in my opinion, if Drupal starts promoting also these individual distributions to the outside world, outside of the community, then this is also beneficial for Drupal itself. Maybe we'll get from 4% to 6%, which is already like an enormous amount of websites, right? And I think looking at some of these numbers, I was also looking at a couple before, where, for example, Thunder has like 750 installs. Lightning, Drupal has 150. I'm not sure DCOF, I didn't look at that one actually, but like Panoply also is like 4,000. Like it's a lot of installs, right? And it's only like a couple of them that I named now. Then there's a huge opportunity for Drupal to get these people here to the community and stick there.
If you were to say, how about what? Sorry, I have some background noises here. If you were to say, what do you think about the Drupal ecosystem as such? Does it help distributions? Like, we have improvements in the Drupal infrastructure. Is there anything specific that you think would help Drupal distributions even more?
I talked a lot about this in the presentation, that Drupal.org is not very friendly for us. and we would like to use some new technologies, and we have to make a step back because we are using like DrashMake or things like this. So and actually, if you want to start a new distribution, it's a long way. Like there is very little documentation. It's very hard to work in this field. So I think that the support for distributions is not very good, actually.
I agree there. Like looking, for example, at these make files and Composer on Drupal.org. Actually, they recently introduced like this Composer stuff at Drupal.org, which is like something that we've been asking for 5 years, right? Some things take a long time at Drupal. Okay, sure, but this is like one things that we've been battling against for years now, and I'm super glad that it's now here. But yeah, there are more things of that Gregor already also discussed in his presentation. And one thing that we have, for example, we've been doing the work outside of Drupal community. We've been doing it on GitHub, for example. Yeah, like not ideal if you want to like really tightly integrate with the Drupal ecosystem. Like we are using the Drupal issue queue, but that's simply because we really want to get that input easily, but it's an additional effort that we're taking in order to get community feedback, because the community is on there. But the actual development, yeah, it's not doable to do that on Drupal.org. I think with GitLab, it's been changing, but I haven't had too much experience with that, to be honest, to be able to say anything about it.
Yeah, the same for us. Exactly, I can only with your opinion. So we are doing our internal development using our Bitbucket pipeline and so on, and then we deploy to Drupal so fast as possible when the functionality is fixed or when the bug is fixed. We are using to the issue lists functionality from Drupal.org, but it's not much comfortable to the use of Drupal.org for maintaining the development and so on. Therefore, I don't think we are going to use from now on this Drupal.org possibility, because, as you said, as the maintainability, the friendly usability for distribution is really poor. We are going to continue use the issue list to maintain the bugs, the response to bugs and comments and so on, but the development is not going to be moved to Drupal.org for sure, at least for now.
Yeah, with GitHub, we noticed that people started to actually contribute to us by GitHub. So they are just creating forks of Drupal and merge, create pull requests back. So it's really great feature, and it's much better than patching on Drupal.org.
Yep.
Because everybody has account on GitHub, so it's really cool.
Yeah, we see similar, indeed, like the people forking and like doing the pull request. And because we're, for example, not using PHP unit, like all our tests are running on like Travis in the CI. Like if people contribute the pull request, then this can be tested automatically, and we can much easier merge this and review it. With patches, we have to create a pull request. We have to do a lot of additional effort to get this in. And like moving outside of that issue queuing, it's much better maintenance. But then again, looking at like we're using, for example, Jira for internal development. Also for the development, we're moving towards the distribution. Yeah, like it's like if we would be duplicating all the effort that we're doing in Jira to the issue queue, like I don't know, like it's way too much work. In the end we are doing this. We are always creating like an issue queue or issue ticket on Drupal.org for a feature that we're delivering or a bug fix that we're doing. But yeah, it's only to be able to get like the contribution. Like it's super lame, but yeah, it's only to get that and to give people like some chance to give feedback there.
Right.
Not ideal.
Totally agree.
And that's probably a great way to move to the next question. that we have here, what kind of contributions would you expect the most from users? You said you try to get the contributions. What would these be? What helps the most if you're a Drupal distribution maintainer? Are these feature requests or are these bug fixes? What do you see in the issue queues of Drupal distributions, and what's most helpful? What is the most problematic?
Looking at what we see a lot of different things coming in, which are usually either support requests or are issues in the distribution, like bugs, etc. We also get some feature requests, but usually like it's not that much, or some change requests. It's not like the majority of things. What we'd love to see is like a lot of like bug fixes, obviously, and a lot of like changes in the distro and proposals to what can be done better. But yeah, we all know that contributing like to a distribution, as I think Gregor also said, like it's a lot of like effort to get into a distribution, effort to get into something and actually contribute a fix. So when you're asking someone to fix an issue, then you need to have some pre-knowledge in order to do that. And in a module, it's usually easier. In a distribution, like it's pretty complicated indeed to get like, okay, how does this work? Where do I need to find the issue? Where is it occurring? You need to spend like quite a bit of time to get into that. And that only, I think, is viable for users that either do this for fun, for their own project, or for companies that work with a distribution, install it for a client, encounter an issue, and actually comment that back in the issue queue. Like this is already one of the major things that we're seeing, and you know, I'm just speaking for us, is that we also used to do that, is where we fix something and we only fix it for our internal project and never really contributed it back. Like there's already a big step to take for people to contribute something back or report it in the issue queue. So for us, I would say it's more or less like reporting issues. Just reporting it already is super helpful. As what we're seeing in a distro usually always comes back into an issue ticket that is being sent in by a customer, for example, of ours. So if we can get this from the distro and sometimes even a patch, you know, I'm super grateful already. Super useful that people are committing some of their time to helping us, and in the end, like a lot of like end users of Open Social.
I don't hear.
We can hear you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm muting myself here. My kids are going to bed and they may make some noise. Yeah, I just wanted to ask if you have anything to add, Grzegorz or Raul, to that.
So in our issue list, we can normally see requests, feature requests, new improvements to be added to the distributions, a few bugs too. But the bugs are normally reported internally in our bug system. So here the users that try to install the distribution reported some bugs, some issues that they became at the time of the installation, when they were really helpful to allow us to fix the installation process and to be it more flexible and more fault tolerant for different environments. And that was really amazing for part of this user, because it had, as I said, it has helped us to improve the installation process, removing components that can break the installation, or adding another ones that can improve the velocity of the installation and so on. But as I said, mostly are requests for integration of this or this another functionality, the integration with this module, for sending some emails, or compatibility with web fonts models and so on for different for the different models we are developing via because we started from blank distribution, as I can so say it, and for this reason we hadn't so much integrations between modules. All of our modules were totally coupled, and it has and more issues we are seeing in the issue list, or we saw in the past in the issue list, were in this direction to integrate another model. Fortunately, the number of these kind of issues was reduced, and now we are receiving more feedback about the functionalities, or this is not being so properly when I install blah 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 and so on. So a little bit of a kind of little bit mix of all kind of reports.
Brilliant.
The same for Drupal, to be honest. So we have a lot of feature requests, a lot of support requests. So we use gulp and npm. So there are tons of questions about that's something broken or something like this. You know that by downloading npm packages, sometimes something goes wrong, and there are a lot of random errors. But we had one cool example of a contribution lately when we pushed a bug into develop branch, and like 15 minutes later we got pull request from some user, from external user with fix of that. So I would say we would expect that, but it's one-time action.
Though.
True. Yeah, one other thing I noticed as well is that we were able to motivate other people to contribute a bit more, because our distribution Drupal relies on other modules, and we were finding bugs in those modules and submitting pull requests or patches for those modules, and we were then prompting the maintainers to maintain, and sometimes a module was not updated for a year or so, and then suddenly, not only our but other pull requests were integrated, and they were receiving an update. We were kind of poking, trying to reach out to the module maintainer who maybe didn't have time, and saying, well, there are so many pull requests or patches here that you could integrate and make a new release, and then your module would be compatible with Drupal 9. Maybe you'd want to do that. And they actually were stepping up and releasing a new version, which is also great, because not only bugs for our distribution were fixed, but also many other bugs at the same time. And so that was a pretty cool thing as well, that we as distributions can motivate other people to contribute back as well.
Yeah, and I kind of have to underline that as well, because what I see is that we're also using a lot of modules, a lot of different modules, and what you see is that once you start using that, integrating into your product and using it more and more and more, then like people that work with Open Social actually see, okay, this is actually an issue in a module that is being used by Open Social. Okay, let's fix it in there. So there's different kind of activity flows going through the community. I think it's really cool to see how it can be a catalysator there.
Brilliant. Yeah. So the last question that we kind of discussed a little bit, and you kind of said a little bit about it, but would be when to use the distribution and when not to use it. We kind of touched a little bit on these points, but if we were to sum it up for our listeners here, when to use a distribution and when not to.
Whoa, that is really from my point of view a really personal opinion from the people that want to use a distribution. If you change distribution for another thing, like when to use a static site generator and when not to use it. It's the same. It's the same answer for this question. So from my point of view, the use of a distribution makes sense when you don't have a lot of specific requirements, or you don't need to change more things into this distribution. So if you want to have an out-of-the-box usable site, you can use directly a distribution, and with less changes, or maybe with a little bit development, you can have a really usable and ready-to-use website. But if you need to personalize a lot of modules, a lot of things, and you need to change or to implement more specific requirements of the for the users or for the customers and so on, maybe it doesn't make sense to use a distribution. If you didn't develop this distribution, of course.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. Again, it comes also back down to like what is the use case, right? Like what do you need to use? What do you need to do for a client? And we will touch upon that as well. If you have a specific use case, then hey, you should definitely try to see if you can find a distribution that matches that as close as possible. And like again, what I say, like in our opinion, we should really say no also to customers and clients, and see if you can match as closely as possible to like this distribution, or if needed, like contribute back to that. I think that's also the most important way for Drupal in general to grow, like contribute back to the main product, contribute back to the distribution, to the module, instead of like doing it all over yourself. I think if I look back at like the nine years I've been doing Drupal, like I've probably done like some projects I've probably done like 20% over and over again, but in a different way. If I would have been so smart to make smart modules from that at the start, or reuse things that were already there and improve at every iteration, then this would have saved a lot of time for myself, for the company, but also for the community in general, to make it more flexible. And I think that's one of the things that we as a community should also take more into consideration, like really look at what is good for the community, what is also good for the future of Drupal in general, and like these distributions or modules or whatever, really. Like make them more flexible, make them make them better, iterate over and over again. And if everyone uses Agile now and then, like you're always like starting with like your small skateboard and making that into a car, right? Like what if we can just make a flexible car, indeed, like what we also propose with these components? Like that's a much better solution for everybody in the end, and will also make our clients, they have to pay less in the end, right? Like they only have to pay for what you need to build extra or make flexible on top of what's already there.
And for me, it's nice to know the distribution to this extent, to know this point when customization is no longer profitable, and it's better to use something else. So it's probably why we know this for our distributions, but it's hard to hard to know it for others. And if we cross this point, there are always trouble, and it's always a problem. So also when we show to customers how the websites should be done, it's not always possible to use Drupal, for example, because some people has different expectations, and it may not even be close to what we offer.
So another approach is that you can try to convince your clients that the distribution is the best way for them, and then you can use a distribution. So in this case, it's a matter of convincement that they are thinking what they are not thinking. So that is another approach, and it's really difficult when the customer asks for a functionality or for a couple of functionalities that are present in a different or a slightly different way in a distribution, and you are sure that it can be adapted with less effort to try to convince this customer that the right way is to go to distribution and make this slightly this small changes, and the functionality that's already exists in the distribution is the really what he or what this customer is asking for, and not exactly the functionalities they are asking for. So this is really complicated to manage the customers, to avoid spend more money or avoid to misuse hours, work hours, and so on. It's another approach.
Yeah, I agree. And in the end, it's also a bit about like like the incentive for a Drupal agency or in general is also, I think, a little bit off, right? Because the more you change actually a distribution, the more money you get, the more hours you can sell. So we're also putting this system, like we're keeping it for like it's the same, and just make money out of this, right? So in the end, it's not better, but I'm getting more paid because I have to change something. I'll do it for the client. If we say no, we don't, like it's maybe easier to maintain in the future. It's cheaper for the customer, but you do not get like the amount of money that you would have otherwise got. So it's a very tricky balance, I think.
Yes, but at the end, if you convince this customer that this is the best solution, and at the end, this customer is really happy with the solution, and he can work with this solution you propose and you develop. This can be communicated to another customers that this client already knows, and so on, and you can earn more than if you were go to the other way and directly to develop the exactly functionalities with probably not the right happiness or the full happiness of the customer and so on. So you should all think about this kind of situation. It's not only about one customer, but about the communication of this customer with another ones that can potential be new clients for you. This is another thing to take in account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Very interesting. Very brilliant, guys. Brilliant points. A lot of interesting topics. We've run out of questions. These are all I had, and we're over an hour and 20 minutes talking. I think that's enough for us. I think we've touched on a lot of subjects. Unless you want to, say anything else or raise another subject.
I have maybe one subject that I'm really curious to hear.
Go ahead.
So sorry for interrupting you, but
one
of the things that we're working on is getting more data on how open source is used. The problem with an open source distribution is that you don't want to get like the data from these users. Obviously, you want to be really careful with kind of like data you get through these end users. For your own customers, it's different because you can get like an agreement from them, etc., and analyze that data. I'm really curious to see if Gregor or Raul has any input on that. Is this an issue that you're dealing with as well? Do you want to understand, or how do you understand how these distribution end users use your distribution? It's a tough question, right?
Yeah, could you re-ask the same?
Sure. So maybe it's just a problem for open social. I don't know. But if we look at, we have a lot of like different features in open social. So look, for example, we have private messages. We have events. We have different kinds of topics. For example, I don't know, like different kinds of groups, but we have no idea if anyone ever uses the private message module. We have no idea. Is this something we can get rid of? Is this something we need to put much more effort in? It's completely unclear.
we had a discussion about a similar thing when we were introducing commerce into Drupal, and we were thinking, how will we ever know, like, if Drupal is being used? Is it the commerce that drives the usage, or maybe nobody uses commerce at all? Everybody's, and we thought for a while about doing a submodules on Drupal.org for the particular features. Like, for example, for commerce, that was the first when we said maybe let's do a Drupal commerce module that you have to install, which will bring all the theming and everything, and this would tell you how many of the installations do actually use. So percentage wise, you could this way understand, if you have a component based build like this, you could maybe split it out into modules and track by installations people will not install. So that's one approach. Another approach to that is, I suppose, well, for us it's easier in Drupal, for example, because we can actually find the websites online and see which things they actually enable. So do they use blog posts or not, or do they use e-commerce? We can actually manually, maybe to some extent, try to find them, but for you it's probably more difficult because social engines will be closed, will not be available to you. They might be firewalled. You might not even know where they're installed. A bigger problem, I suppose. But you could try by the modules. That might be a solution, but it's a big change in architecture.
Yeah, it's a good point. Thanks.
Yeah. For us, unfortunately, we don't have much more on Drupal.org because they are currently so coupled that they are not able to work normally separately from the distribution, and our market is really small because the government or the users are mainly ministries and government and so on. So we have the acknowledgement that some users separately install DGOF for it for themselves, and the distribution is being used for end users and so on, but mainly is being used by ministries and so on, and they say to us if the components are really working fine or not, and if all components are used or not. But we don't have really exactly number of users that are using a component if we don't even know if all components are being used. We only know that we deliver the components together with the distribution, and we can only suspect based on the pulls in GitHub and so on Bitbucket, if the component has been installed, but we are not sure if all components are being used.
Another solution I just thought about, which requires a lot of coding but might be somewhere in the middle, like whenever you install any software, like right now these days, which is almost anything, you have this tick box, allow for anonymous statistics to improve the software, and you can opt in or opt out, and you might have this module there which kind of collects just anonymous statistics and sends it's like the amount of private messages or just a list of modules installed every now and then. And maybe users would opt in voluntarily sometimes and allow you to collect these. And it wouldn't be that difficult. If you think about for example, you could send a list of modules, open social modules, which are actually enabled, and you could do some sort of stats on the database tables, like how many users are there, how many private messages. You can see which table it is, and just send that without any data on anyone. You wouldn't have any confidentiality issues, but you'd see that, oh yeah, these guys generate 10,000 messages a month or not, so that might be an option, but because it's an opt-in most likely, rather than you'd probably have to make people aware that it's there. Then not everybody.
No,
will use
that's
it.
actually something that we did implement. So we did have something where we let people opt in and send like anonymous feedback on that. But yeah, I was also really curious to hear your thoughts on this, and if there's actually some issues for you. We don't really use that data that much yet because it's also it's opt-in, and we don't have much that we pull out of that yet. But it is super interesting data, and it's in general very hard for modules or distributions to get like any input on like what kind of features are being used. And I think that's something that Drupal.org could provide, right? Could be something that
Right.
could be a central functionality there.
That might be interesting. True. Very nice. Anything else, guys?
No. Well, I
Awesome.
have a really quick question about Drupal distributions and the future of them, and that is related to the coupled Drupal distributions that all people are talking about. So now most of the community members are working on the coupled component, React components, and distributions based on React components and so on. We are thinking about this kind of distributions and component development. Do you think it's worth to prepare like a React plus single static site generator distribution to be used with Drupal, or it doesn't make any sense for now with a Drupal technology?
I have some thoughts on that, and I'm curious to see, I'm, for example, waiting for the React module, which is supposed to be in Drupal 9. There's supposed to be a menu component for Drupal 9, and I know there are many approaches to do headless Drupal, and we've done some headless Drupal work ourselves, where we have the front end in React or something, and back end in Drupal. And for a one-off implementation, this works. I mean, if you have your own but I'm really curious to see, Drupal is a massive, very sophisticated, pluggable, configurable system in which it's for example, selling themes on Team Forest or wherever is difficult for Drupal because most of it is kind of built out and configured, and everything is different every single time. So how to build it in the backend and then build the front end that it's still configurable, that's a very tricky, I think. You have hooks and events and everything, and where you can hook into Drupal and change the behavior. Now, how will you do it in the front end and in the back? That's going to be a massive challenge, I think. I don't really know how to tackle that.
Yeah, I suppose the problem is also that people lost track when they should use reactive frameworks and when not. So they're using it for static sites, which makes no sense, and it's kind of blurry right now. So sometimes it's an overkill to use the coupled Drupal.
Mm-hmm.
So interestingly enough, we're going decoupled with Open Social, which is going to be a massive project.
Oh,
and you're using React, I know, because I saw a tweet on Twitter.
We started this project, and we've been thinking about this over a year already. So we kind of started in the summer with some small parts, and it's a massive challenge from all kinds of sites, because one of the biggest things is maybe still that for Open Social to be useful as a distribution, you want to have a front end, right? And actually, what we want to do is we want to move that specific front end that we're building in React. We want to also make that a bit well, to some extent, the glue at least to be in the hosting of that to be in our SaaS offering. So we want to open source all of the React components and make sure that people can build their own site using these components, so that it's still like an open source free front end. But yeah, I've also come to the conclusion that in order to be useful, we should probably still keep our old team, which is I think based on Bootstrap 3, I think, or 4. I'm not entirely sure.
4.
4 indeed, then. To keep that maintainable, so that people can, like, out of the box install OpenSocial as a distribution, use it for their use case. If they want to change it and go completely decoupled, it's possible, because like it's API first, it's going to be a decoupled distribution, and you can use these components that we already built. It's super awesome. But there's not going to be much people doing that. Let's be honest, like there's not going to be a lot of people that are going to use Drupal and React, because it's two completely different ball games. And we used to have like the Drupal frontend was always like a job, I don't know, like a job description in itself, right? Like you were Drupal frontender versus you were React frontender. It's completely different. So it is. There are a ton of challenges there. I think it's super interesting to be going that way, and I think definitely also something that we really like to talk about with other distributions as well. Like, hey, how should we solve this? What is acceptable, and to what extent are you decoupled out of the box, for example?
Yeah, that is interesting. So I think the people are not right understanding what decoupled, what is the meaning with decoupled, because decoupled means you have a static site at the end, and you deliver a static site, which is, in my opinion, a little bit absurd with Drupal, which is a content management system that are continuously evolving and adding new content and so on. And much people are thinking a fully headless Drupal site built on top of React with Gatsby and static site generator. So I'm not sure if it's going to work really. Yeah, only due to the nature of Drupal itself. But let's see what's happened.
Like, we can talk a long time about
of
this.
Course.
So I'd love to definitely hang out with you in a different call, maybe also to go really in depth about this. I think it's and also would love to join if you guys from DrupalCamp join, if that's possible, as you have already done some headless sites as well. So I think it's a super interesting topic for the future of OpenSocial, but in general Drupal, right, the ecosystem. It's also a very difficult discussion about, like, to what extent are you going to do that or not. It's also really about, like, what kind of use case are you solving? Are you working on something that should be fast and progressive and decoupled, or should it be something that it's like Salesforce, like everybody uses it. If it looks crap, like, okay, sure, it's how it is, and everybody accepts that. That's also fine, right? It's different use case. So super interesting topic.
Yeah, thank you for your answers. Very interesting.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Brilliant discussion. We don't have any more questions apart from the ones that I have now. We have one more, which is a joke question about what's Grzegorz hiding behind his black curtain. Okay, well, this one remains unanswered for today. maybe some other time. Listen, guys, thank you very much for this panel. It was a great discussion. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you, everybody, for participation. We start tomorrow, the next day of DrupalCamp, I think at 10 o'clock. So enjoy the rest of your evenings. It was a long day. Thank you very much, and thank you for participation.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity, and we're in touch.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys.